Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to take a look at the new mousepad out of Japan, the X10 Control. And the thing that's really cool about this, of course, it does ship flat and this thing kind of pops open. It's almost like a feeling back in the day of buying an album and popping it open and then, taking the mousepad out of the cover. So definitely the best packaging I've ever seen and something that is really, really cool. There could be a few inhibiting factors just off the bat if you are kind of looking for a new mousepad and something of this quality. The pad is 460 by 400 millimeters and it is 3 millimeters thick, and that thickness for me is really at a perfect level. I've said it before and I'll say it again, I prefer 3 millimeter thickness on my personal mouse pads. So if that size is too small for you, that kind of takes you out of this category or this pad off the bat. The second thing is the price point. The price of the pad is $99.99. If that's more than you're willing to pay, you really have no reason to go any further in watching this review. One of the most applicable comparisons that I can ever show you guys is going to be the X10 compared to the Artisan Hien. The pad is definitely a more clothier surface. It does not feel abrasive. It does feel a little bit sandy on your skin, but it is not a raised or aggressive abrasiveness like the Hien. The pad does have a lot of dynamic friction, and static friction is definitely a bit high as well, but it is never muddy as far as static friction is concerned. The muddiness really comes from that dynamic friction. You can really see that the pad being advertised as control is certainly no false advertisement here. In comparing this to the Hien, you can see that the dynamic friction on the Hien is a little bit lower. The mouse definitely glides a little bit more and is a tad bit more slippery than the X10 pad, and the static friction as well is definitely a little bit less on the Hien, but very controlled, and almost a similar point to the X10. So those inner circle hand movements when you are trying to manage or quickly adjust your aim with the inner portion of your hand and those movements, they are somewhat similar. The pad being a little bit more controlled on those dynamic movements for me has actually, surprisingly, and I am someone who actually prefers those speedier pads, but surprisingly I have been scoring higher in aim labs on this control pad, and playing in Apex, I haven't found that increased dynamic friction to be an inhibiting factor in my aim. And I actually like the surface of the pad more than the Artisan Hien. So for me, it's definitely a pad that for me is better than the Artisan Hien, but we're talking about nominal margins. I love the Hien, I love the X10, and on some days I might prefer the faster dynamic on the Artisan Hien over the X10. So it really becomes a question of if a side grade to a Artisan Hien is worth it for you to pay $100 for the X10. I do think right now this is my #1 pick for a control pad if price is of no concern to you. The foam feels extremely good, probably for me better than the foam of the Artisan pads, and the surface itself is a really, really nice balance between easy static friction inner wrist movements and a nice control on those dynamic movements when you need that little bit extra control if you are over aiming or over flicking. So for me, the pad actually did play surprisingly well in Apex Legends for tracking type movements, a little bit tighter my crosshair on targets as I'm tracking, and the pad also played very good in Valorant and CSGO as well. So if you are somebody who likes having that nice balance of very controlled inner circle movements for wrist aim, and then having a little bit of control on dynamic motions, this pad is very, very good. But I do want to show you guys some clips in Apex. Let's check it out. Another new pad that just came out is the Vaxee PA, and next to the XTEN, the XTEN actually feels a little bit faster on static type movements. They are somewhat close, but I would say the XTEN is a little more maneuverable in those inner hand circular movements. Dynamic friction, the XTEN is definitely higher, and the movements take a little bit more force to apply. You can tell on dynamic, the Vaxee PA feels a little bit faster, but the pad still does come to a nice controlled stop. And personally for me, since I am primarily a wrist aimer, having those nice, easy inner circle movements is very important for me. And having that extra bit of control on dynamic movements is somewhat welcomed and feels actually pleasantly good. Much better than I thought it would. And another pad next to the XTEN on the right, I have the Mercury prototype from Lethal Gaming Gear on the left. And the price point of the Mercury pad makes the XTEN a bit hard to swallow. Both pads are very good, the Mercury being somewhat comparable to the Artisan Hien. I would say the static friction is a little bit higher on the XTEN. Dynamic friction is a little bit higher on the XTEN as well. But I would say that the Mercury prototype that I have is definitely probably a little bit slower feeling than the Artisan Hien. So kind of an in-between between the XTEN and the Artisan Hien. I tested the pad with Tiger Arc V1s, Tiger Ice skates, as well as core pads on my G Pro Superlight. And all of the variations of third-party skates really do feel fantastic on the pad. I think you lose a bit of control using the Tiger Ice skates on the pad. The Tiger Arc V1s feel probably the best on the pad. It's a really nice balance of control and speed, and the core pads definitely feel the most controlled with the pad. So, keep that in mind, that if you are getting this pad to be a control pad, you do want to pay attention to what skates you are using with the pad. But again, all pads feel different, of course, with third-party skates, and you are still going to get more control on this than the Artisan Hien as well as the Mercury with all of the third-party skates. For me, again, I think my favorite experience on the pad was with the Gretza using Tiger Arc V1s for the EC1B, the small version of the EC1B skates. And it is now going to be my primary driver for competitive play. I do think that $99 is really tough to justify for the pad because it is very, very close to the Artisan Hien and the Mercury. And just to recap, my Mercury prototype, which of course is not the final product and things could change, is a in-between of the Artisan Hien and the XTEN being the most controlled, and then the Mercury, and then the Artisan Hien. So if you do like a bit of a faster feeling and a more abrasive feeling, the Artisan Hien is probably your choice out of the three pads. If you're looking for something that isn't quite that fast, but not quite this slow, it seems the Lethal Gaming Gear Mercury, if it's close to the prototype, would be your pick. If you are looking for a really nice balance of static friction and dynamic friction, dynamic for control, static for a little bit of speediness and ease of operation, the XTEN really is a fabulous pad that I cannot recommend enough. Again, only if price is of no concern to you. If that helped, guys, please leave a subscription to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next review. Peace.